Welcome to Whispers in the Dark, where the chilling stories of real-life horror come to life. If you're brave enough to dive into the darkness, sit back, relax, and listen closely, because tonight, the whispers are about to begin. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you never miss a spine-tingling tale that will keep you up all night. Story 1: The Survey Team and the Mysterious Room. Hello everyone. Before we dive into today's stories, I must warn you that this is a very dark and terrifying tale, as the title suggests. Today's story deals with an attempted murder, as well as some disturbing matters concerning children. Although we won't go into detail, these subjects will be mentioned, and the decision to continue listening is entirely up to you. But if you're still interested in hearing more, then let's begin, and remember to always stay alert. I work for a company that specializes in conducting survey contracts for the U.S. Forest Service, specifically focusing on surveying areas with invasive vegetation. Our job is to travel around the forests of Southern California, including areas that are off-limits to the public. My team typically consists of 5 to 6 people every day, and we work 10-hour days, 4 days a week. As I mentioned, we move through various forest areas, searching for invasive plant species to track using GPS and remove them. I remember one day, when I was just starting out, we came across an abandoned campground, which clearly showed signs of suspicious activity. We often parked at a lot across the street, took our lunch breaks, and noticed many vehicles driving into the area, since the main entrance was blocked by a large metal gate. People would get out of their cars, some walking dogs, others taking photos, some having picnics, and others bringing gear and disappearing into the area. For a long time, we ignored this area because, according to our supervisor, no invasive plant species had been recorded there, so we didn't bother checking it. However, the area still seemed suspicious, as we frequently drove by and saw discarded items. Eventually, my team was assigned to another part of the forest, and we didn't return to this area for a long time. Still, every day we passed by that road and continued to see vehicles parked there with more abandoned belongings. One day, our supervisor asked us to walk a nearly 7-mile stretch of road that ran through the abandoned campsite. He asked for volunteers to check the sides of the road, which cut through a narrow canyon about 150 meters wide. The campsite was located on the right side, so I volunteered to go right with 2 of my colleagues, and we planned to thoroughly inspect the area. We carried tools including a hoe, a folding saw, and a Pulaski, a 2-headed axe, with one end shaped like a shovel. I also carried a cookery knife on my belt. We began walking into the campsite, and I kept a close watch on our surroundings. There were many items left behind, like refrigerators, storage shelves, and broken glass scattered all over. In addition, there were several holes in the ground, perfectly square-shaped, dug into the concrete floor, and they were quite deep. They weren't very large, just about 1.2 square meters. We continued deeper into the area, and I noticed small pieces of fabric with blood stains scattered on the ground. They were near a large pile of dirt covered in rocks, and half of a skateboard was sticking out from the mound. Nearby, there was a wooden cross, and I thought to myself, could this be a grave? I called my two colleagues over, and I read the inscription on the skateboard. It said the name Diamond. I couldn't read the dates clearly, but the grave was quite large, possibly 3 or 4 feet long. One of my colleagues thought this might be an animal grave, but that didn't explain the blood-stained fabric nearby. I thought maybe it was just a pet grave, someone's animal that wandered into the area and got abandoned. We continued moving, and I saw many invasive plants around. I was reading the names of the plants and recording them on the GPS when we noticed a small building tucked away in the corner of the campsite. We walked over to it, and there was a small gap between the rocks, almost hidden, that no one would notice from the road. As a result, we discovered another canyon branching off from the campsite. After checking the map, we realized this area could contain many invasive plant species. After recording the data into the GPS, we moved closer to the building. It was about the size of half a shipping container and clearly abandoned. The door was slightly open, so I used the hoe to push it open. Inside, it was pitch black. One of my colleagues pulled out his phone and shone a flashlight inside. The scene was strange. There were discarded pornographic magazines on the floor, blankets, and children's clothes. I stepped back and started to leave the area while my colleagues joked about it, but I didn't want to look at anything else. As I reached the area near the road, I saw a truck parked in the campsite, but it wasn't one of ours. No one was using the picnic area, and strangely, the truck had driven off the shoulder to avoid the gate and parked in a secluded spot. It seemed like there was no one in the truck or around it, so I just waited. When my colleagues arrived, I pointed to the truck, and they said the driver was probably in the old restroom nearby. They wanted to check it out, and I couldn't leave them alone, so I followed. The building was V-shaped, with men's and women's restrooms at either end and a storage room in between. They entered the men's restroom, and the door was damaged. Inside, there were more pornographic magazines and children's clothes, along with pillows and blankets. There was a small hole cut in the wall leading into the storage room. They seemed about to crawl through the hole to investigate. At that point, I was standing outside the building, facing the storage room door. Suddenly, I heard the door latch click. At that moment, my colleagues ran out of the men's restroom, and one of them swung the Pulaski axe and slammed it into the door handle, damaging the surrounding area. About 10 to 15 seconds later, we saw a man run out of the restroom and head into the campsite, entering the building we had first explored. The story unfolds as follows. One of my colleagues had stuck his head through the small hole in the restroom to look into the storage room. In the total darkness, he shone his phone light and saw the man standing in the corner, surrounded by boxes on shelves and blankets and pillows scattered on the floor. The sight scared him so much that he ran out, and the man in the storage room chased after him. We immediately radioed the nearby fire department, and they sent some people to help. The firefighters saw it, open the door and set up a spotlight, and the entire room was filled with pornographic magazines and children's clothes. We directed them to the building where the man had run into, and they opened the door, turning on the spotlight. The strangest thing was, after checking every nook and cranny, no one was there anymore. We went into the area and finally discovered that a wall had been broken, allowing the man to hide in the darkness. This story has no clear ending, and I still can't explain what happened. Story 2, Strange Footprints in the Forest, an Unsolved Mystery. This is a story that my father has told me many times. My father worked as a logger, specifically operating a giant chainsaw that could cut down massive trees and trim them to the required size. His job often took him deep into forests, far from the outside world. My father's logging team worked on a piece rate basis. He would be assigned to cut trees in a specific area and paid according to the number of trees he felled, not by the amount of time spent. As a result, he would often work between 16 to 20 hours a day, finishing his tasks as quickly as possible before his team would collect the logs and transport them to the mill. For about half the time, my father worked alone, and the rest of the time, he worked with another chainsaw operator named Rennie. They communicated via radio when working together, which would become significant later on. I apologize for the lengthy introduction, but this is the background of the story. My father and Rennie were assigned to a new job in a remote area, and they had been working there for about 10 days. Everything seemed fine, but they kept hearing strange sounds through the radio. The sounds were very bad, and they couldn't make out any words. No matter how many times they changed the radio channel, the strange noise followed them. As they ventured further into the mountains, the sounds became clearer. Both of them realized that something was wrong. The snippets of conversation they could hear through the radio made them more uneasy. At the same time, they began noticing strange objects scattered around the area, signs that someone had been here, someone who shouldn't have been able to get there. This area was about 2.5 hours drive from where they were staying, up the mountain. They had spent 3 weeks clearing the path so that their trucks and machinery could get up. My father and Rennie realized they were in a very isolated place, a place where no one should be, and the worst part was that they still had another week of work to do there. They only left the area to refuel the trucks and buy more supplies, otherwise, they slept in their camper trucks. One day, Rennie discovered a tent and called my father over. When they checked the tent, they found a sleeping bag and a duffel bag. Inside the duffel bag, they found several sets of children's underwear and items that resembled a set of rape tools, rope, tape, drawings of children being abused, and photos of children who looked unaware that they were being photographed. Inside the tent, there was also some food, including canned goods and an apple. The apple wasn't moldy, proving that someone had been nearby recently. At this point, they were in a very remote area, and it seemed that only a madman would live here. Rennie immediately wanted to leave, but my father, a tireless worker, insisted that they finish the job before leaving. They decided not to speak over the radio unless it was an emergency, but still kept an ear out to see if they could hear anything more on the radio. They were now close enough to hear a conversation between two men over the radio. They talked about gathering water and firewood to start a fire. Nothing strange, just that they didn't belong there, and the tent definitely belonged to them. By the end of the working day, my father heard someone on the radio gathering wood for a fire. My father immediately turned on the radio and tried to make contact, asking, "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" Then, the conversation between the two men abruptly stopped, and no one replied. That night, Rennie woke up my father and whispered for him to grab a gun because someone was outside. My father recalled that when he woke up, he could only hear the faint sound of footsteps outside. He frantically searched for the gun and realized it was out of ammo, and he didn't know where the bullets were. Rennie didn't have anything either, and calling the police seemed pointless for many reasons. They heard the doorknob twist, and the door opened. Their camper truck was high enough that they had to jump in, with no ladder or step. The door opened, but neither my father nor Rennie moved. Outside, they could hear scratching at the door. After 4 minutes, my father couldn't take it anymore and signaled Rennie. He stood up quietly and moved toward the camper door. As soon as he touched the door, he felt a sharp pain piercing through his right eye, so intense that it spread to his left cheek. He was cut, fell to the ground, and hit hard. A man with a knife jumped onto my father, while another kicked him in the head. Rennie rushed out of the camper and shoved the man with the knife away from my father. My father realized that the second man, who didn't have a knife, was running away, while the man with the knife was chasing him. My father and Rennie quickly jumped into the truck and drove straight to the nearest hospital for treatment before reporting the incident to the police. 2 weeks later, when the rest of the logging crew was finishing the job, one of them was found tied up, gagged, raped, and murdered, with the body thrown into a ditch. No one was convicted of the crime. To this day, my father can hardly see anything with his right eye. His pupil is misshapen and looks more like a cat's eye than a human's. My father suffers from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, from those events, and since then, he hasn't had a single good night's sleep. What do you think after hearing this? Do the strange and chilling events in this story make you reflect? Do you think there is a truth behind all these mysteries, or is it just a bizarre coincidence? Share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to not miss out on other exciting stories. Story 3, Meeting the Button Man. My name is Ben, and I live in Australia. In the southeast of the country, the state of Victoria has a vast, remote mountain region, accessible only by 4x4 terrain vehicles, and it takes several days to get in and out. This area is popular with hunters, campers, and explorers, but it's mostly only the brave who choose to go there. My girlfriend Jess and I decided to camp there for a few days, far from the noisy world and without any phone signal. We prepared thoroughly. The 4x4 was carefully checked, fully fueled on the roof rack. We double-checked our gear list, and we notified the nearest police station about our trip. This was very important, especially since we weren't going with a group and there were only the two of us. Our destination was the Wayangata Valley, a deep valley in the mountain range, surrounded by towering snow-covered peaks and a river winding around the valley floor. After a long day of driving, we arrived just as the sun was starting to set. We found a quiet spot by the river, beneath the eucalyptus trees, set up our tent, and cooked dinner by the campfire. The peaceful atmosphere made us feel as if the outside world had forgotten about us. After dinner, we sat by the fire for a while, then decided to go into the tent and fall asleep. But that night, I suddenly woke up to a loud noise. At first, I thought I had misheard, but after listening carefully, I didn't hear anything else. I thought maybe I was just too tired. But just a little while later, I heard the noise again, this time clearer. It seemed like something had fallen off the camping table and rolled onto the ground. I thought it might be a possum or wombat, common animals here that often wander around at night. They were probably just playing around. I tiredly muttered to myself and closed my eyes to sleep again. The next morning, when I woke up and stepped out of the tent, a strange feeling took over me. The scenery wasn't the same as we left it the night before. One of the two chairs was no longer near the campfire, but closer to the table. On the table was a loaf of bread that I was sure I had put away the night before. I approached and looked closely. One piece of bread had been bitten off, as if someone had eaten part of it. I quickly asked Jess, "Did you wake up early and eat the bread?" "No, I didn't touch it." We both checked our gear, nothing was missing. However, when I went to check the car, I noticed strange footprints around the front of the vehicle. They were very clear and not ours. Maybe someone had come and gone during the night. Despite my suspicions, we decided to stay, partly because we had guns and the 4x4, so I felt safer staying than leaving immediately. But the unease still lingered. All day, we didn't see anything unusual until I decided to walk across the valley, about 800 meters, to visit an old abandoned house from the early settler days. On my way back, I saw Jess running toward me. She was panicked and quickly told me that while washing something by the river, she had seen a man standing in the bushes, staring at her. Jess described him as an elderly man around 70 years old, dressed in rags, his clothes torn and tattered. A sense of tension started to rise within me. How could there be anyone here without a 4x4 or off-road bike? And why was he able to get to the other side of the river without crossing it? We decided to drive along the valley, checking nearby campsites to see if anyone else was around. But after a round of checking, we found nothing. With an uneasy feeling, we returned to the campsite. That night, as we were preparing dinner and having a few drinks to ease the tension, Jess needed to use the restroom. I went with her to the portable toilet about 50 meters away from the camp. When we returned, we saw a strange figure standing just a meter from the camp, next to the gun I had leaned against a tree. The man was standing there, with gray hair, a filthy face, and tattered clothes. Then, he looked at us with a cold stare. It was him, the man Jess had seen that morning. I felt a chill run down my spine. I was about to step forward and grab the gun, but he spoke first. "Hello, just taking a walk, nothing to worry about." We stood there, not knowing what to do, only feeling fear spreading through our bodies. "Where are you from?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Just came from over there," he answered calmly, then walked into the darkness without a flashlight. We couldn't take it anymore and decided to leave the camp, even though driving in the dark in this mountain area was incredibly dangerous. We drove through the night, not encountering any other campsites or anyone else. When we got home, I told a few friends about the experience. One of my friends, an experienced camper, made my skin crawl when he said, "Did you meet the Button Man?" "Who's the Button Man?" I asked. "He's someone who lives in the woods, hunts with spears, appears unexpectedly, and scares people. He always wears strange bone buttons on his clothes and can make campers disappear. The police have investigated multiple times, but there's never been any evidence." A quick search on Google revealed everything. Unsolved disappearances, encounters with the Button Man, and strange events no one could explain. We never returned to that valley again, and we never went back to that plateau region. So, that's our story about our encounter with the Button Man. If you've ever experienced similar strange events or had feelings you can't explain, feel free to share your story in the comments. Don't forget to like, share if you found this story interesting. Story 4, The One Who Waits. About 5 years ago, I went through an event so strange that it still haunts me to this day. It was a spring morning in Utah, with the air still chilly enough that I had to wear a thick coat and often scrape the ice off my car windows before heading to work. At the time, I lived in a quiet community on the west side of railroad tracks that led to oil refineries. The area where I lived was almost empty of residents, but now everything has changed, and it's become a bustling residential area. One Friday morning, around 9:30 a.m., while I was on my usual way to work, my route was blocked due to an accident. I decided to take a longer route through the industrial area east of my home. I passed by the only gas station on the road and continued into the quiet industrial area, where there were only diesel trucks and a few cars like mine. As I passed a small hill and crossed a railroad track, I saw a car parked by the side of the road, its hood up, and a man standing next to the driver's side door, staring at me as I reached the top of the hill. The car was a copper-colored coupe, an old model from the 70s or 80s, possibly a Nissan. Although I'm fairly knowledgeable about cars, this man completely distracted me because he looked like he had just stepped out of the 70s. I can't forget the image of this man: blue jeans, a white shirt visible under a jacket, brown work boots, a dark brown leather jacket with a fur-lined collar, a thick mustache, and a hairstyle like John Travolta's in Saturday Night Fever. He was a big guy, in his 40s, about 6 feet tall, a little overweight but still strong looking, with his hands in his pockets, standing straight as if he were at attention. When I saw him, I slowed down to see what was going on, but he didn't move, just stood there staring at me. No nod, no wave, just a vacant stare. I felt a strange, unexplainable sensation, and instead of stopping, I hit the gas and sped off quickly. This was completely out of character for me, as I'm usually the type to help those in need. However, the presence of this man made me feel an unease that I couldn't explain. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw that he was still standing there, just slightly tilting his head to watch me drive away, then turning back to look westward, waiting for the next car to pass. I arrived at work feeling guilty for not helping him, but when I told my boss and close friend about it, they both felt uneasy too and told me that I did the right thing by trusting my instincts. I didn't think much about it afterward, just continued with my day. However, when I was driving home that evening, I decided to take that same route to see if his car was still there, just in case he had really run into trouble. And indeed, the car was gone. Feeling relieved that at least he had resolved whatever issue he had, I no longer felt guilty about not stopping. I went home, went to bed, and thought that I would never think about it again. The next Saturday, I was working again and took the long route because I didn't have to worry about traffic. Around 9:30 a.m. the next morning, as I was driving to work, I noticed something strange. The industrial area, which was usually quiet on weekends, was empty when I drove through the day before. I had driven for 15 minutes in that area the day before without seeing a single car. Even the gas station was closed on weekends. When I reached the top of the hill, I couldn't believe my eyes. He was standing there again, the car still parked in the same spot, the hood up, and he was standing by the driver's side door, staring at me. This time, when he saw me, he took his hands out of his pockets and waved, as if trying to call me over, but didn't move. I hit the gas hard, and he, with his face still emotionless, as if he had no feelings, started walking towards my car as though he was trying to stop me. I was genuinely scared now. I had to swerve to avoid hitting him, but when I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw him walking back to his car, staring west as though nothing had happened. The scene was so strange and unexplainable. I decided to call the police and ask them to check if he was really in trouble. Although the area was small and not prone to major incidents, I still felt uneasy. After investigating, the police couldn't find the man, and I never saw him again. Still, I can't forget how odd it all was. Was his car really broken down? Or was he just a strange person? Or maybe he was something supernatural that I just couldn't explain. That question still haunts me to this day. Strange experiences like this are still a part of my life, and I can't help but feel a chill whenever I think about that moment. If you've ever encountered a strange or scary situation, don't hesitate to share your feelings in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more captivating stories. Story 5, The Ride with a Stranger. This is the story of my stepmother and her best friend. I have my own story, but I'm still hesitant to share it, so I decided to tell someone else's story, hoping it will help me open up more. My stepmother didn't really love us, but she shared with my older sister, who is 3 years older than me, and me a terrifying experience she once had. She said that since she was a child, she had told this story to us as a warning about the dangers of strangers. This story is the danger of strangers in our family. My stepmother, let's call her Macy, grew up in a wealthy family in the 1970s. Her mother had moved the family from England to America when she was only 9 years old. Macy went to a good high school in a nice town, where she befriended a girl named Lily, who wasn't the type of friend Macy usually hung out with. Lily wasn't someone who stood out, not the kind of person Macy would typically be friends with, but they hit it off, and Lily often took Macy to do outdoor activities she loved, like hiking, fishing, and canoeing. There's even a funny photo set of the two of them camping together. My stepmother in those pictures looks like she didn't enjoy anything, with dark circles under her eyes. Still, thanks to Lily's influence, the two of them started doing those activities often. One Sunday, they decided to hike up a hill about an hour's drive away. Macy brought along her expensive hiking boots, and the two of them drove on the trails to begin their trip. Lily parked the car in a large open area, where only a few small wooden markers indicated parking spaces. At that time, there were no other cars there. This, only later, would become significant. They began climbing the hill, leaving the trail behind because Lily liked to take more adventurous routes. The trip was nothing special. If you asked my stepmother, she complained for about 15 minutes about how dirty and bug-filled the trail was. Once they reached the top, Macy started feeling tired and wanted to take a break. When they started heading down, about 10 minutes later, Macy complained again about her fatigue. Lily agreed to take an easier path down rather than continuing on the rough trail. After they had walked for a short while, an old, dirty red pickup truck appeared and stopped right next to them. The driver was a man with a large beard, wearing a baseball cap, and with long hair. He smiled through his beard and asked if they needed a ride. Macy described the man as friendly, even somewhat charming. However, from that very moment, Lily felt uneasy. Despite this, Macy convinced Lily to get into the car, saying that it would only take another 10 minutes to reach their destination. They opened the door, and the man asked them to sit in the back seat, then the truck began to drive. At first, everything seemed fine, but Lily felt a sense of discomfort when she noticed a rope on the truck floor and 4 wrapped up plastic boxes under the passenger seat. A subtle tension filled the air, but Lily didn't want to make my stepmother scared, so she kept quiet. However, after about 10 minutes, they still hadn't reached their destination, and there were no other cars on the road. Lily began to feel worried and asked the man if they were getting close. He said he was taking a different route and would need to stop for a moment to take care of something. This made Lily even more anxious, but at that time, they were just 16-17-year-old girls, so they didn't want to make a fuss. When the truck stopped in front of a small house, with a tree that had been felled and an axe stuck in the trunk, everything became frightening. The man told them to stay in the car, that he would be right back. Lily kept urging my stepmother to get out of the car with her, but Macy just wanted to ignore it and stay in the car. When they got out and walked closer to the house, what they discovered only made the situation even more tense. An axe, covered in dried blood, lay under the driver's seat. Lily completely panicked, and when she saw the axe, Macy also started to feel afraid. They decided to leave immediately and ran into the woods, wandering until they were sure they were back on the main road. They kept looking around, fearing the man would chase after them. When they finally returned to the parking area, everything seemed calm. But when they looked closely, they saw the truck still parked across from them, motionless and facing them. This made them hesitate to leave the woods right away. After waiting for a long time, they saw the man step out of the truck, look around for a moment, then return to the truck and drive off. The 2 girls quickly ran to their car and drove off without stopping. This story made me never want to encounter that man again. Although he might be very old by now if he's still alive, the fear I felt still lingers. If this story makes you feel scared or think about something, don't hesitate to share your feelings in the comments below. Please like if you found the story interesting, and don't forget to share it to warn your friends about the ever-present danger around us. If these stories gave you chills, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the Whispers in the Dark community. Share the terror with your friends and bring them into the shadows, because there's always room for one more listener. Be part of our growing family and dive deeper into the mysteries that lurk in the dark. Turn on notifications so you never miss a heart-stopping tale. And remember, the darkness is waiting, but are you ready to listen?